Welcome to another episode of Women in Focus. We are in the house of a very talented young woman. She is an artist, she is musician, she is sculptor, she is a painter. She's everything an art encompasses. Her name is Nina Budhev and she's our Woman in Focus today. How are you doing, Nina?
I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely to have you. Thanks for being here.
Lovely to be here. What a lovely house you have.
Thank you.
Now, I see that these two pieces that we've got, one behind us, one next to you, you made this. How did you make it? It's clay. Is it clay?
Yeah, it is clay.
Yeah.
It's stoneware mixed with crushed brick.
Okay.
So that gives it its solid feel when I'm building.
Right.
Because they're all hand built.
So do you have a
wheel?
A wheel.
Yeah, I used to have a
and
wheel.
A kiln?
Yeah, used to have a kiln. I used to have everything. I don't have a kiln here.
No. So where did you have it?
Well, this was in my studio in England before we moved.
Okay.
And these two pieces and the one back there
Yeah.
are three pieces which are a part of a huge collection, which was an exhibition I had at the Nehru Centre in London.
Wow.
So all the pieces got sold, but
Yes.
I was too precious about these pieces. So I couldn't part with them. And we had some crates made for them so we
Right.
could ship them. You know, this one's got a slight little chip, but
Yeah.
she's good.
She's okay.
She's all right, yeah.
It's very, very personal.
Yes.
And the touch is there, right? You have to touch everything to make sure that it is. Now, you've been interested in so many different things. I was just reading about you. You've been involved in the Juno committee with, Creative BC and all that. Raga Experience is one of that. So music is a part of your art, is a part of your painting. So were you like that when you were a child?
Yes, my parents were very worried about me for a very long time.
Worried?
Yeah.
When you were born.
But I was always inclined to go towards the arts
Right.
as a practitioner. And of course, it scared everything out of my mum and dad, more my mum. And my dad, he's a creative soul.
Right.
He's not with us now, but he always encouraged for us to follow our passion, to make our passion the major part of our life box,
Right.
rather than put it on hold. And this is what we bring to our parenting as well.
Yes.
So having been born and brought up in England, I think I've always overcompensated for that need
Yes.
to know more about my culture
Right.
and heritage. So trips to India were almost like trips to a foreign country.
Right.
Because my parents are from Nairobi,
Right.
from Kericho.
Okay.
So being a Gujarati family in Leicester, we were impacted by the Gujaratiness there, which was fantastic.
Of course.
And
Leicester is one of the most vibrant Gujarati areas in England.
yeah, it's a Baroda right, of England. So we really enjoyed
Right.
being brought up there. But I was always drawn to the arts. I have two sisters. I'm one of three.
Yes.
I'm the middle one, the rebel.
Yeah.
And both of them are not into what I'm into.
No.
They're quite straight. So I think I kind of got the creative part of my family genes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've really enjoyed exploring, which is what my creative approach is about. It's all an exploration, and I'm constantly seeking answers with what I do. So I don't produce to exhibit, so to speak. I produce as a form of my journey.
Or your expression.
Or my expression,
Yeah.
exactly. So everything is a song for me, everything. Be it sculpture, pottering around with my plants, or
Yes.
chip-chopping my trees in the garden, everything is a song.
So music is an integral part then of your life. Anybody in the family that was
Yeah, my father.
Okay.
Yeah, he would play music everywhere.
Yeah.
He would drive us mad. Looking at it now, I'm convinced he had ADHD. But he could never pursue that because when the family came from Kericho, they had to all get into labor work, and because they left so much behind, as you
Yes.
know, in Kenya.
Yeah.
So they were building a life, so they put their passions on hold, and they
Right.
were really adamant that we don't do that. That we follow our passions as much as we can.
So growing up in England, how was it for you?
It was fun, but there was always a void.
Yeah.
that void, I think I tried to fill with the exploration of my art form.
So you said you'd go to India. Was it a yearly trip to India?
No, it was always a research trip.
Yeah.
It was something I wanted to know about.
Right.
And
Because parents are not from India.
we have no
were-
ties in
Yeah,
India. We have no family there at all. So it would be a foreign visit.
Yeah.
So for me, it would always be a visit through a course that I was doing,
Right.
or through a research assignment. So it was very much later in my life that I went to India. I only went, the first trip was when I was at university at about
wow.
20.
Okay.
But up until then, I really did not know much about how it was to actually be on that soil.
Right. India is a rich country in everything.
Yes.
In music and heritage and expression and stories. And you've done your masters in, the
Temple sculpture.
temples of India.
Yeah.
Just tell us something about that.
Yeah, that was quite lucky, I would say. I always thank destiny for pushing me that way, because the Royal College of Art at that time,
Right.
and this is a good 20 years ago, were really increasing their frequency on the research of Indian art and culture as it lives in India. And Prince Charles is the patron of South Asian arts in UK.
Right.
So there was a lot of funding available at that time, and I capitalized on that. I had a great grant which allowed me to do the masters in a subject that I wanted to do. So it was an independent research study.
Yeah.
And it was parallel to another study that a friend of mine was doing, which was called Living Wood.
Right.
So I did Living Stone and she did Living Wood. And it was a joint exhibition that we had for a couple of years in London, which toured. And then that materialized into a production where we ended up going on stage and becoming actresses and acting out some of the parts. And it was just kind of a domino effect, and we just went with it. I'm a water sign, so I have to keep flowing. That's part of my nature.
So performing arts is a part of it too.
Yeah. We starred in the Ramayan,
Yes.
which was a huge production produced in England. And it was choreographed by Shambhai Mithaiwala, who's no more, but he was very prolific. He did Meera Sham Dulari, he did Sampurna Ramayan.
Right.
And I had the great fortune of being Sita in that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I learned a lot.
I want to take a short commercial break, but I want to come back and take you to the journey of, meeting your life partner and producing a beautiful son that you have, and then your work here in Canada. But let's take a short break.
Sure.
Nina Budhev is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Nina Budhev is our Woman in Focus today. So we were in England, and you were having fun on stage, performing, and so on and so forth. And then one fine day you met your husband?
It wasn't one fine day, actually. It was after a bit of panic from my mum.
Mum was panicking.
Mum was panicking. Oh
Yeah.
God, she's 28. When is she going to get married?
Yes.
She's just pottering around with her clay and her brushes. What's going to happen to her? And so they started fixing us up. Right. So,
I like that.
So I had all these dates that I had to do.
Did you have to carry the...
No, I didn't. It wasn't that formal, luckily.
No.
It was meeting at a coffee shop. And then,
Yes.
they were, 2 seconds into the meeting, I was quite bored, and I think I frightened a lot of them away, because
Yes.
all I talked about were these unconventional ideas.
Yes.
And they were like, crikey, so you're not going to be at home doing the rotis all day?
No,
I said,
no
no.
way, Jose.
I said, no, I'm going to be painting. I'm going to be doing sculpture. I'm going to read and write and do everything that drives you mad. So that was the end of that.
Yes.
And then my bhabhi, who knows Sanjeev's Bua, they kind of did a little scheme to fix us up, because he's quite an oddball himself. He's an economics mastermind.
Yes.
And he set up his own business at a very young age.
Right.
And so into risk management. So they thought, well, these guys, no one else is going to have them but each other.
Yes.
So let's put them together. And it worked.
It worked. It really did.
It worked like a dream.
Yeah.
So I'm forever grateful to his boy and my Babiji for getting us together, and they keep waving the flag about it. You know, every anniversary they say, this was our job, this was our little intervention, you know. So yeah, they're very proud of that. So we got married, and we were luckily married at George Harrison's house, which is now Budhev Manor.
Yes.
In Watford, and it was beautiful. And we were luckily one of the first couples to be invited to have our ceremony there.
Isn't that beautiful? You and I have something in common then.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed George Harrison.
Oh, wonderful.
And on my way here, I was listening to the Chants of India, and that's in my car playing all the time. And what an amazing guy he was. You know, out of all the Beatles, he was the shyest and the quietest.
Yeah, and the most introspective.
Yes.
Yeah. So after we got married, you know, we decided to travel. Because marriage did scare me. It was difficult. It scared him too.
Right.
And I think the only people he didn't scare was each other.
Right.
So we decided we'd ta-ta to everyone, and we went around the world for a year.
Wow.
So
where did you all go?
We went everywhere. We started in Europe. We ended up in India.
Right.
And so we did all 4 continents. We didn't do Africa.
Yes.
And at that time I lost my father, who was very young. He was only 59. So we went back and dealt with everything that we had to deal with.
Right.
And then we moved here the following year.
So what made you move to Canada?
When we were traveling, we fell in love with BC.
Did you really?
And it wasn't supposed to be a permanent move.
Yeah.
My husband was working for an Irish company at that time, and they wanted to open up an office here. So that's how we ended up in Coquitlam, because it was the only place we could afford office space. So we came here, opened his office, hired a staff, got everything going, settled down, got our properties and all that, conceived our little boy, and then the Irish company decided to say, well, we've changed our mind. So they pulled the rug.
Oh no.
So we had these mortgages and the office and everything, and we were expecting a new addition to our family, and so it was kind of crunch point.
Right.
But within these crunch points, sometimes the most beautiful outcomes appear.
Yes.
And that is what happened. So he started his own consultancy business, and that has flourished, thank God. And we had Budhev here. So that's why we stayed. And once Budhev got into the school system, we couldn't really pull him out.
No.
And just go back to UK, because I actually really like the school system here, how it focuses on individuality rather than crunching for statistical grades. Of course, grades are important, but so is the whole roundedness of the character building. So I love the social emotional part of the curriculum, and that made us stay here. Yeah.
Do you miss England?
Do, terribly, yeah, of course, because we have historic relationships there, and I have history.
Yeah.
You know, I have a 20-year plus history there.
You've done a lot of stuff here that means a lot. You know, your work for the Raga experience and things. I want to talk about that a little bit. Let's take a short break. Come back.
Sure.
Nina Budhev is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Nina Budhev is our Woman in Focus today. So I brought you from England to here, and you're here. You've got your good-looking son who's also a musician. But there is a void that you feel in your artistic life. You've done quite a bit, and you've worked with Creative BC. You've done stuff for Juno. Well, doesn't that satisfy you?
Not really, because there are criteria that I'm meeting. It's a seed initiative. These are all seeds that I'm planting. So I can't go for it, so to speak, you know. And I am treading on eggshells much of the time, because when you are accomplished where you were and then you move, I think you have to tread carefully not to offend other artists and other people who've done so much work in that land. So there's a sense of that imposter syndrome that we do live with I do, certainly, and I have been living with that. But it's not a negative, it's just something to be aware of.
Yes.
The sensitivities that are involved in the community. I think it's important to manage people's feelings.
Talking about the South Asian community?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the South Asian community entirely. I think it takes a fulfilled creative person to want to prop up another one.
Yes, and that probably is the biggest lack in the community.
Yes.
We do not have the feeling of fulfillment because they are not fulfilled themselves.
Yes.
They're very insecure. So it is very difficult for them to give a shoulder to another person.
But it is changing.
Yeah, I hope it is.
You know, I
haven't
see-
seen that in my 44 years.
No.
No.
I'm optimistic. So,
Good.
you know, and that's the only way to be, I think. Otherwise, you would bring everyone down. I mean,
what would you like to see? If you could have your way, what would you do that would change?
I'd like a centralized system where the funders recognize the value of funding a centralized organization, which takes more accountability of what is funded. I think that is very important. We had that for many years in the UK with the Arts Council of England, and I managed their revenue client company for many years. So we were funded with $500,000. But that was prescribed to be the decision maker for valuing true art form, representation, and also managing people's feelings, as I say, and keeping people content with their part in the play. And I think that's what's missing. I'd like to see that. I don't know how.
I think if you look at the composition of Creative BC, maybe they are, they could be an organization if they could just open up their mind a little bit.
And that is the part I battle with. Everything that I have worked with here has been a stubborn door to push.
Yes, I know.
And I don't think the artists actually know that. They just think these things land on my lap. Well, they don't.
No, they don't.
It's been me chiseling away like I do my sculpture. It's the same approach, you know, in making things malleable enough to suit us. And when we present an opportunity to our artistic community, I'm not sure if it's really understood what has gone behind making that available. So I think that is a block, because if they did understand, I think they would approach it differently to start with. And their delivery would be different too, you know.
Yes.
Remember,
but don't forget that they do not just look at our community, they look at all the other communities, and then the major community is non-ethnic.
Yes.
And that's what is looked after most.
Yes, it is. And, you know, I think collectively we need to change that.
Yes.
One person advocating is just not enough. And I've seen that. I've been on some boards and committees, and I've voiced as much as I can. But it's just data. Before you know it, it's just high language that's ripped off and not actually put into action. So that doesn't frustrate me. That enlightens me to think, where do I want to put my energy?
Right.
So, but I do feel that the musical community here has got a lot of potential.
It does.
If they can just get it together. I mean, I love what Kamal recently did with KVP Heritage. I thought that's fantastic, because it really pulls everything together.
That's right.
And if everyone can just stay in their identity but come together, I think the funders will be more responsive to that.
That brings me to your son, who is a musician.
Yeah.
In a mother's words, tell me something about Hriday.
Hriday.
The name itself is just amazing.
Yeah, well, when we moved here, remember we moved here just after my dad had passed away at 59. All of a sudden, he was a beautiful, fit man, and he just went. So I was in mourning. And in that morning, I did conceive Hriday, and it must be something to do with the mountains here, it must be. Because the air was like fantastic. So when I conceived him, I always felt he was staying close to me. Yeah. He was a breech baby, and I feel he was always staying close to me because I was so sad being alone here and grieving and missing family and friends. That's why I called him Hriday, because he always, my rib cage had moved because he was pushing towards my heart, you know. And so I think that's where his name came from, and he has certainly made us pray.
Yeah.
And instead of speaking, he was always humming. And I didn't get it at the time, but I would play Ali Akbar Khan Saab's CDs, and he would be humming.
Yeah.
So I would be playing the CDs that were gifted to me by the artists
Right.
in my career,
Right.
and he'd be humming them to the proper sur,
Right.
never off.
Yes.
And I thought, what is he doing, you
Yeah.
know? And he would go up to the washing machine and listen to the vibration there, or he would go up to the dishwasher, or he would repeat any siren that happened. And then he would do this everywhere. So I
Right.
just put a toy pair of tabla under his hands, and he was on tal.
Yeah. Wow.
So then luckily there was a teacher here who I'd worked with for many years, Partha Sarathi Mukherjee, and they took a few lessons with him, and that's when we knew we need to pursue this
Right.
along the musical system of Shastriya Sangeet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's how Hriday's passion and his sensory development
Yes.
became more of his own language, I would say.
What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
Moving back to England. I do miss it a lot. In the next 5 years, I see building firm, solid bridges here. I'm involved with a very big initiative in California with India Currents. So I want to build bridges there. We're working with Ali Akbar Khan School and international artists. So I'm managing a few artists there, which is going to continue forever. And I want to build some bridges for the artists here to be internationally staged
Yes.
in US and in England and in Europe. That is what I would like to do before I move back.
I wish you all the best. I don't think you're going to move back.
Oh,
I think
no.
you're going to be very happy here. People are going to look after you here.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Thank you for being our Woman in Focus
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.
Nina Budhev has been our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.